It's a brand new name, a brand new look, but still the constant, daily, weekly, never ending Canadian soccer content that you look for. This is OneSoccer Direct. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Could not think of a better day to kick things off than the start of Canada's quest in the Concacaf Gold Cup. We all understand the history, Oliver Platt and Gareth Wheeler. 2000, the last time Canada won this thing. And every year that it comes up, especially in the last decade, really, it's been this is the year. Canada's going to lift a trophy. The silverware should be theirs. They're the favorites, etc., etc. But there's a different feeling around the group this time around, despite a Nations League setback. Ollie, would anything short of winning the CONCACAF Gold Cup be considered a big failure, a big step backwards for the Canadian men's national team?
I think you used that word setback to describe the Nations League, and I think I would call it one if they don't win a trophy this year. That was what we came into this year hoping for, I think, was that this team would be able to take that next step. They weren't able to quite do it at Nations League, and I think this is the time now where you want to see them do it at this Gold Cup. Would it be, a huge failure if they lose in the final to a good Mexico team? No, I don't think you can call it that, but it would be a disappointment for sure. So I understand that, look, the World Cup is the most important thing, and everything we're doing right now, there has to be an eye on the World Cup and the development of the team towards that. But I think, this team they're not kids anymore. They've been through a World Cup qualifying cycle where they finished top of CONCACAF. They went to a Nations League final and lost. They went to a Nations League semi-final again and couldn't get over the hump earlier this year. I think these players are ready. I don't think this is another one of those kind of steps on the way and learning experiences. I think this team has everything required to win a trophy in this region and to do something that's only been done once in the history of this region, obviously by Canada back in 2000, which is dethrone Mexico and the United States at one of these tournaments.
There are two sides to this answer, Adam Jenkins. The first one is public perception. I think Canadians believe that this team can go on and win the Gold Cup. Outside of Canadian circles, that might not be the case, but the perception of others, especially American fans, is, well, our full team isn't playing. And typically the Gold Cup is a tournament where there is lots of rotation amongst the squads, and still year after year, the United States, Mexico, United States, these same two teams win each and every year. So the perception from the outside, that's one thing. The internal expectation is to go on and win it. We said it after the Canadian Shield game. Jesse Marsch had the players running laps, like almost beep test style, around the field. They are dead set on pushing this program forward, and they firmly believe that means maybe playing a little bit pragmatic and finding ways to go out and win. And I think the Gold Cup would set things off really nicely in terms of the build-up to the World Cup. For me, I'm more concerned about the way that the team plays, which sounds kind of silly because this is tournament football. I just feel like if there was a tournament to win, it was strongest on strongest. It was the CONCACAF Nations League. And I'm not sure if a deep run in this tournament will make up for that loss. Perhaps Oliver Platt's right. Perhaps the only way to make up for the setback in March is to go on and win this tournament in July.
There have been a ton of different tests for Canada under Jesse Marsch, from Copa America on through to the most recent Canadian Shield. We have seen a lot of regulars grow in their positions. We've seen some players like Tajon Buchanan, who is absent, step in and return to form. We also know that there's some players who won't be featuring in this tournament. Alphonso Davies on the shelf, Sam Adekubi on the shelf. We don't know if we'll see Steph Eustachio, depending on what happens with Porto at the Club World Cup. But the Canadian Shield was two very different matches with a little bit of experimentation in different places. We haven't really got a clear picture, Gareth, have we, despite your best efforts on Sunday on match night to name your 2026 World Cup roster? We still have questions. Do you think we'll have some more answers to those questions, whether it's the goalkeeper, whether it's the midfield, by the end of this month?
Perhaps. I do warn that plenty can change over a calendar year. From now to the World Cup, we're always looking for these indicators of what might be sustainable moving forward, but injuries and form and club football and standing in the national team, all of that is absolutely fluid. So I don't think you're going to be getting answers, but maybe more suggestions of the way that things may look like. For example, central midfield in this tournament is a big one. No Stefan Eustachio to start. I mean, he's a near mortal lock, if fit and healthy, to be starting center midfield for Canada come 2026. But who with? And what's that combination going to look like? And there's a real opportunity for one of a number of players to step up in that role over the course of this tournament. The number 9 position, who's going to start up top with Jonathan David? I really, truly believe that it's a 3-horse race as to who may be in the lead. Perhaps this tournament can give one player the edge, but again, a lot of club football needs to be played, before that's all said and done. And then maybe depth at center back, fullback, and the goalkeeper position. So yeah, there's plenty of things that we may be able to get suggestions for or about, but with so much volatility, especially where at least 10 or 11 of these players are going to be playing club football next season, it's not the be all and end all.
It's not the be all and end all. I do think some of those positions you just mentioned, though, there is more opportunity at this tournament than there is others to kind of really stake your claim, or at least to be in pole position, I would say, going into next year. Like central midfield for me, one of those players could have a great tournament. Multiple of those players, obviously with Stakio out, could have a great tournament. I still think we're going to want to see, what does Saliba do next if he moves to Europe? What does Kone do next season if he's playing for a different club? Matthew Chouanier is another one. You're going to want to base that a bit more, I think, on club form. I look at striker and goalkeeper, and I think there's a real opportunity at this tournament for someone to kind of take it by the scruff of the neck. If one of the centre forwards really lights up this tournament, has a great Gold Cup, scores a few goals, I think they're going to be in pole position going forwards to be Jonathan David's partner. Same thing with goalkeeper, particularly if it's Dane Sinclair again. If he plays the key games in this tournament and that's who Marsh goes with, it's going to feel like it's Dane Sinclair's job to lose going into 2026. So those would be the two that I'd pick out where I think we could see maybe something more substantial.
You think to these different measuring stick types of tournaments on the way to a World Cup, and Copa America, obviously one of them, with different opponents that you don't typically see, and how Canada would fare in an environment like that. And you always look at the players that come out of it with a much different standing, maybe more of an aura. Certainly the center backs at Copa really stood on their heads. And since then, really, Derek Cornelius, Moise Bombito, they have been the two that you say, okay, that question is answered thanks to a breakout tournament. Ollie, in this one, from Honduras on through to what Canada will hope will be a final with a trophy lifted, who would you select, as the strong candidate for a breakout star at the Gold Cup?
I have to go with Promise Davids. His is the name that always jumps out at me. I think it tends to be more likely to be an attacking player. We saw Tajon Buchanan a couple of Gold Cups ago. Obviously, we've seen Alphonso Davies at this tournament. Jonathan Davids really have kind of breakout performances on the international stage. And I think this guy's a really good player. And I know Kyle Larin is a really good option as well, who has done a lot for Canada, and he's still absolutely going to be in the mix. I know Daniel Jebison is an interesting project for them, but Promise David is coming off a season where he scored 19 goals in a good league. Like, this is a league, Opta puts their ratings out, that's the 7th in the world in their rankings, the Big Five, the English Championship, and then it's the Belgian league. They won that league above Club Brugge, who made it to the Champions League knockout stage and knocked out Atalanta this season. Like, there's some good teams at this level. And when you watch some of his games and some of his goals in this league, he looks like one of those players that you create on FIFA and max out the physical stats. So he's bigger and faster than everyone else. He's been dominant at times, despite not starting the season as the starting striker for them. So I'm excited to see him. I think this is a tournament with obviously maybe some lesser opposition in the group stage where you can get some early goals and some confidence. And I think he could have a breakout Gold Cup.
It's easy to pick a striker. I'll look elsewhere on the field. I like some of the depth players across the defensive line as well, but I think once they're all fit, it's going to be very difficult to dislodge Johnston, Davies, Bombito, Cornelius out of their position. So how much of an impact will that make? I'm going to go straight back to central midfield. I think the breakout is going to be Nathan Saliba, but I hope it's actually Ismail Kone. And you might say, Wheeler, well, Kone's kind of already had a breakout. He's had some moments. But since those moments, there's been a lot of ups and downs over the course of his club football and with the national team. I don't think that Ismail Kone has the absolute trust of Jesse Marsh. And quite frankly, the central midfield was a little bit soft when they played Mexico. I just don't think that they played up to par the Concacaf Nations League. I think that Kone, for Canada moving forward, is him being a true difference maker in this team. And since Jesse Marsch has taken over, he hasn't been that. I want to see him go into beast mode in this tournament, be that physical presence, be reliable in terms of his positioning, his discipline, and his defensive duties, because I really think that he could be like a really, really important piece of this men's national team. But I think it will be Saliba because of his legs in the midfield, because of the way that he complements Eustachio. I think he's going to get a real run here, whether it's alongside a Kone, an Osorio, a Chouanier, to show what he can do. I really like what he brought to the table against Ukraine, and I do hope that we get an extended look over the course of this tournament, because I think his profile fits the best into the way that Marsch wants to play. So I think it will be Saliba, but I hope that it's Kone.
Our pal Christian Jack is with the Canadian men's national team. His Gold Cup diaries can be found across our various social media platforms and the OneSoccer YouTube channel. One of those discussions was with Jesse Marsch, the gaffer of this team, and Gareth. He called the match against Honduras arguably the most important game of the tournament for Canada. Do you agree with that sentiment?
I think that's coach speak or athlete speak. You take one game at a time, that old cliche, which gets tiresome from time to time. But I do think that there's merit behind making that statement, not because of the opponent. It's all because of where. It's at BC Place. This is where Canada, with home fixtures at the World Cup, these could be make or break. They need to acclimate to that environment. They haven't played nearly enough games in Vancouver over recent years, and a new surface that's being laid inside BC Place as well. All of that in terms of what it means for the team and the players, but also for the fans in Vancouver. They're going to play a significant role on creating an environment and atmosphere come the World Cup that you really need to make that home field advantage felt and fully take advantage of it if Canada wants to have a deep run through the World Cup. So this is a true dress rehearsal game. And these are the things that you can kind of mimic and get something out of. So in that sense, yes, the Vancouver fixture in the Gold Cup could be the most important one.
Holly?
But in the sense that it's the first group stage game and not the final, no.
I was reaching. I was reaching.
I appreciate that. I think the other thing that you can say is that he will want to be able to rotate the team in one of the other two games and basically drop everyone. And that could be a decisive advantage or disadvantage when you eventually play the United States or Mexico if you get there. If one of those teams is fresher and much better rested than Canada are, particularly with the way Canada play. Like I thought by the end of the Copa America, they were gassed. So I think that would be valuable to be able to change the team in one or both of the last two group stage games. But
yeah,
no, not the biggest game of the tournament for me.
Winning the group is obviously important. This looks to be their most difficult opponent. After that, I mean, they could have a path, where they take on Guatemala, perhaps Jamaica, after Guatemala already beat Jamaica, then go on a path where they could face a weakened U.S. side. It's Costa Rica. Like it could be a pretty straightforward path to make it to the finals, avoiding both Mexico and Panama, who I rate as the two other teams that really have a legitimate chance of winning this tournament.
I think one thing that all Canadian men's national team supporters can agree on is it's so much fun to watch Jonathan David play football. We've even had the conversation on this very program, or I suppose OneSoccer Today, the old program, about Jonathan David. Is he the most important player to this Canadian men's national team? And regardless of the camp you are in that, there's no doubt he has been one of the most in the news, on the highlight reels players for Canada for a while, and always leading quietly by example. With no Alphonso Davies, Gareth, no Stefan Eustachio, Ollie, Jonathan David was named captain for the tournament. Wheels, what did you make of the reaction from Jonathan David to the news, and also Jesse Marsch giving Joe the armband?
I think he's been brilliant. I thought his press conference was a real eye-opener about what his position is on this role within this team. I think that he's just such a humble, hardworking, straightforward character that it exudes just confidence. And it's easy for his teammates to respect an individual like that who continues to work hard each and every day, who's showing up to be part of Canada despite having the biggest decision of his life straight ahead of him during or after this tournament. And I just love when he said on Monday that when Jesse Marsch called him about being captain, his first reaction was, well, there's other players that are probably more suited or ahead of me in the pecking order. That's how humble he is. And I just think that that sort of attitude is exactly what this team needs right now. Selflessness. And it seems like that's kind of the demeanor, that's kind of the atmosphere within the Canada environment right now. And what I saw from him as captain against Ukraine was a player that did take on a much different role on the field. He held different players accountable. I've never seen him be so commandeering in terms of his persona on the field, just barking orders, keeping players in line and making sure that instructions were said. That's not typically the way that he's gone about things. So I love that he's kind of taken upon this role. And he represents a lot that's right with this program right now. So I think it's a good pick. He's really impressed me. And maybe it's going to be a little bit of a decision on what to do going forward. Like Alphonso Davies is out through November. Obviously, he brings a entirely different sort of leadership to the table, but co-captains has a nice ring to it. I don't think that you need just one. I think that you need different characters to step up in leadership roles within this team. But certainly Jonathan David, I like what I've seen, and I think it's a really good choice by Jesse Marsch.
Agree, Ollie?
Yeah, I look, longer term, I think it would be difficult to make a change because you've committed to Alphonso and he remains, I think, the biggest name and the star of this team. But the fact that Jonathan David doesn't think he should be the captain makes me want him to be the captain more, certainly at this tournament, at least, right? I think it just speaks to the humility and the way in which that he is kind of, his career has ascended and his status has ascended and he's a major name in European football now, but he's kept his feet on the ground and stayed so down to earth is pretty remarkable, I think, for me. You can see, I think, the people who see him day to day at Lille in France, the reception he got in his last game, despite the fact that he's leaving the club on a free transfer, which sometimes can cause a little bit of acrimony, as we've seen with certain players. I think that speaks for itself in terms of how he's appreciated there and what they think of him.